Jamie, I'm going to take a firm stance on this. I think every military family should do Roth accounts. Roth TSP, Roth IRA, no traditional accounts.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual Podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Welcome back to the Military Money Manual Podcast. This is Jamie here live and in person with Spencer Reese from militarymoneymanual.com.
Heyo.
He's visiting in Hawaii right now, so we're together in a co-working space and thankful to be here just after Thanksgiving. We're recording this. Today we want to talk about why almost all military families should do Roth almost all of the time. We're going to take a firm stance, like Spencer said in the intro, and we're pretty sure almost everyone should do this. There's going to be some nuances. We got it. Some of you nerds out there are going to find reasons why it might not be true. But for the average military family that doesn't know what to do, almost certainly 100% of you are going to be okay if you do Roth.
Yeah, I know I took the firm stance in the beginning, Jamie, but I'm going to have to caveat it a little bit.
Clickbait, yeah.
That's right. We had to get those clicks on YouTube. It would be very surprised to find a military family where one of the spouses is in the military, or both are in the military, that doing a Roth account would be so egregiously bad that, like, if a financial advisor recommended it, that they would not be acting in a fiduciary manner. Whether you do Roth or traditional, the fact that you're saving anything for retirement puts you so far ahead of the average American that you're going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
This is one of those things where, like, if you are listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing traditional my whole military career. Should I switch now? Probably, but it's okay. Don't panic. Like, you did a good thing. You set money aside for your future self in a retirement account and you had some tax advantage for it. But to be optimal, or if someone is like, I don't know what to do, like Jamie said, if you're in the situation where you're like, I don't know which to choose, Roth or traditional, 99.9999% of you should be in Roth accounts. And we're going to get into the details of why that's true for most military families.
Yeah. Can you remind us, Spencer, especially if there's a beginner, maybe this is the first episode they've ever found of ours, what is the big picture difference between Roth and traditional, and why understanding that is important to help you decide which type of account option, taxable contributions you want to make?
Yeah, so let's start with, what are your retirement account options? So in the military, we have the Thrift Savings Plan, abbreviated TSP, because we love our acronyms in the military. And the Thrift Savings Plans has two accounts inside of it. It has a Roth account, which is named for a senator from Delaware that came up with this idea, and it has a traditional retirement contributions account inside of it. All of your matching at this point in 2024 goes into the traditional side if you're in BRS, so don't worry about that. You're going to have a traditional balance, and that's okay. But your contributions, you can make all your contributions to the Roth side of the TSP. There's also retirement accounts called individual retirement arrangements, or individual retirement accounts, IRAs. And you can open up these on your own. Nobody's going to go open this up for you. You have to take the step and do it. But you can open up one at Vanguard, Schwab, Fidelity, any of the big three brokerages, and you're going to be fine. You're not going to get ripped off. And if you open a IRA at any of the brokerages, you can choose whether you want to open up a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Okay, so 4 different types of accounts: traditional IRA, traditional TSP, Roth TSP, Roth IRA. Now, the difference between the contributions is when you pay the tax. So what the government is trying to do, the United States government is trying to get you to save for retirement, because pensions aren't really a thing anymore. This came out of the 70s when basically they wanted to create a way for people to have a tax incentive to save for retirement, so they didn't have to completely rely on Social Security or a pension, because pensions have gone away for most individuals. Now, in the military, we're lucky enough, if you serve 20 years, whether you're in the legacy high 3 or you're in the new blended retirement system, you will earn a pension if you serve for 20 years active duty. And there's a lot more nuances if you're Guard or Reserve. But that pension is an additional to the savings that you do as well. So if in the traditional system, traditional contributions, you don't pay taxes on that money today, so that's called pre-tax contributions. But in retirement, so after age 59 and a half, when you withdraw that money from the account, you'll pay income tax on the money that you put in and on the growth of the money when it comes back out. On the Roth side, however, you pay your taxes on it today, and when you withdraw that money in retirement, you pay no taxes on it. So it grows tax-free, and then it comes back out tax-free because you already paid your money on it today. And we'll talk about why military pay is special and favors the Roth contribution. That's both Roth IRA and Roth TSP. And again, that's another question we get all the time. Yes, two completely separate accounts and two completely separate contribution limits. So for 2025, the contribution limit for the Roth TSP is $23,500. And for the Roth IRA, the contribution limit is $7,000. So that's a total of $30,500 that a single individual can set aside into their TSP and into their Roth IRA.
Thanks for the refresh on the Roth versus traditional and the types of accounts. We've already said we want to encourage people to really look at the Roth. What are just some of the big picture benefits of the Roth IRA?
So big picture, and this applies to anybody who has a Roth IRA account, not just military, but we'll get into the specifics of why military service members especially should be contributing to Roth accounts. On Roth IRA and Roth TSPs, you have no taxable RMDs on them. So what is an RMD? Well, we had a whole episode about that, but it's a required minimum distribution. So in retirement, on the traditional accounts, the government wants to collect their taxes. So they, at a certain age, I think right now it's like 72, going up to 73 soon, you have to take distributions from your retirement account and then pay your taxes on it. On the Roth TSP and the Roth IRA, there are no required minimum distributions. So you can let that money continue to grow tax-free, and then you can pass it on to your beneficiaries if you want to give an inheritance, and they inherit it tax-free. Once they inherit it, they will have to draw down the account. So the IRS calls those required minimum distributions on inherited Roth IRA accounts and Roth TSP accounts. But you don't, again, they're tax-free because you already paid your taxes on them. You can also, so this is interesting, on the Roth IRA, you can access your contributions at any time. So this is a great strategy if you're saving for like financial independence, retiring early. You want to maximize your tax advantage retirement accounts, but you want to be able to access the money without penalty, without paying additional taxes before age 59 and a half. There is a provision for the Roth IRA that you can pull out any contributions at any time. So let's say on January 1st, you put $6,000 into your Roth IRA, and January 2nd, you're like, oops, my car broke down. I need $6,000 back. You can just request that money right back into your bank account, and there's no harm, no foul.
No penalty.
No penalty. Yeah. Also with the Roth, there's much more reduced concern about future tax law changes. So let's say that they change the income tax brackets in the future, which Congress is always meddling with them, so they probably will. That's going to affect your retirement and your tax planning on your traditional retirement accounts because you're going to have to pay income tax at whatever the rate is that year on the distributions that you receive from your traditional accounts, but you don't have to worry about that for Roth accounts. Now, there's always people out there who are like, oh, one day they're going to start taxing the Roth IRA accounts. And, even though we already paid the tax on it when the money went in, okay, maybe, but probably not. And you know what? Like, if that's your biggest concern in life, I'd love to see what the rest of your life looks like. The amount of money at retirement age on the Roth accounts, it's growing tax-free. Let's say you invest your Roth IRA money in the S&P 500, and it does what it does, where it grows at like an average of 10% a year before inflation for the next 40 years. You could have millions of dollars in your Roth IRA account, and you can, let's say you want to go buy a house and it costs $1 million. You can pull that $1 million out in a single year, buy that house, and you pay no taxes on pulling out those gains if you access it after age 59 and a half.
What I love about the Roth is that if you look at the compound interest graph, where how much of your account balance in the future is going to be contributions versus the principal that you've contributed, it's overwhelmingly your growth. So to pay taxes on the money you put in and then let it grow tax-free, when you look at that compound interest chart, is impressive of how much of that money is never going to be taxed because you paid taxes now and then let it grow. So personally, big fan of Roth for all the reasons Spencer said. I don't want to have to deal with RMDs. I don't want to have to play tax games, or I want to minimize how many tax games I have to play upon retirement. I personally have some Roth and some traditional money just as I've bounced back and forth throughout the years, but I've been a very heavy Roth believer for most of my investing career. And I continue that even though I'm at maybe like a higher tax bracket than others would say. A lot of people will say if you're in the 10 or 12% bracket, definitely do Roth. If you're above the 24% bracket, definitely do traditional. And then anywhere in between is kind of like either or. But like you alluded to, the military situation is different because if I took my job and went to a civilian equivalent, I'd be in a higher tax bracket just for the fact of civilian pay taxed differently than military pay. So I'm a huge, huge fan of Roth for all those reasons.
That's a great segue there, Jamie, to talking about the military pay tax advantage. So let's talk about military compensation. So base pay, that's taxable. But then basic allowance for housing, BAH, non-taxable. Same with OHA, but you don't get to keep the difference. Basic allowance for sustenance, BAS, that's non-taxable. And then lots of the special and incentive pays it depends, right? So some of them are tax-free, especially if you're in a combat zone tax exclusion area, CZTE. And all income earned in a combat zone is tax-free for enlisted personnel, but there's a limited exclusion on the officer side. Sorry, and warrant officers also get unlimited tax-free pay in combat zones.
They say about 30% of the average military person's pay is tax-free. In some cases, if you're in a high cost of living area with high BH, like if you're stationed in Hawaii or Los Angeles or San Francisco, someplace like that, it could be more than that. You know, Spencer, before we hit record, we were talking about how my LES, it was like, here's what my taxable income is going to show for 2024 to the IRS compared to what my gross pay is. And it's a big chunk of difference for taxable pay versus what my actual pay is right now.
Yeah. And so because so much of our pay is untaxable, that's the incentive right there where let's take an example of someone who's deployed to a combat zone, right? An enlisted service member, and their entire paycheck now is CZTEs, combat zone tax exclusion income. When they make the contribution to a Roth account, the money is going in untaxed, it's growing untaxed, and in retirement, it comes back out untaxed. And that's true in the Roth TSP and the Roth IRA. So you have this triple tax advantage that no one else in the United States gets. And if you're not maximizing that, you're missing a huge opportunity to lock in money into accounts that is never going to be taxed. The other thing, we talked about this on our Understanding the U.S. Tax Code, like Introduction to the U.S. Tax Code episode that we released recently. Just because you're in the 12% bracket or even the 22% tax bracket does not mean your effective tax rate is that high. That just means the last marginal dollar that you receive is taxed at 22% if you're in the 22% bracket, for example. So your effective tax rate might be extremely low. Like I think, Jamie, we calculated yours was like under 10%.
Yeah.
As an 05 station.
8%.
8%, yeah. As an 05 station in Hawaii, your effective tax rate is 8%. Whereas if you were in a civilian job making an equivalent salary, your effective tax rate would probably be closer to like 15 or 20%.
Yeah, plus state tax probably.
Plus state taxes, yeah.
Some states are like 10%.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, Hawaii, I think, was that high until they recently reduced it. There is a great example of if you're in the military, your effective tax rate is going to be so low that it just doesn't make sense to take the traditional deduction because like your pay is already so low taxed that you're only going to get maybe a 5% benefit, whereas you could just get that money into a Roth account. You pay your 5% effective taxes on the money that you make now, and then it's going to grow tax-free, that you're going to receive the dividends tax-free, and then in retirement, you can pull it back out tax-free.
You know, before we wrap up the Roth side of the argument, there's a couple things I want to foot stomp. The biggest thing is the simplicity of not having to worry about it in the future. I don't have to worry about RMDs at age 73 or 75 or whatever the law is going to be when we reach that age. I don't have to worry about it for my kids or whomever I leave the account to, that they're going to have to pay taxes on the RMD. They will still have to empty the account within 10 years, and depending on the type of account in a lot of cases. But it won't be a tax bomb waiting for them should I pass and leave them an account. And then lastly, a lot of times when people look at the difference between Roth versus traditional, they're doing it, you know, if it's equal tax bracket on both sides, then it's the same. If you're contributing $7,000 a year, whether it's Roth or traditional, then it's the same and it all works out, or in some cases it works out better one way or the other. But I think the biggest thing that people forget, other than RMDs, which we've hit enough already, is that if people are looking at maxing out their accounts and they're putting $7,000 towards their Roth, $7,000 that's already been taxed is more beneficial than $7,000 in a traditional account that hasn't been taxed. if that makes sense. If you're maxing it out, the Roth $7,000 is more impactful to the long term.
I mean, if you go online and you look at the Roth versus traditional calculators, basically what it comes down to is your tax rate in retirement going to be higher or lower than your current tax rate? Well, we just said that your effective tax rate in the military is usually below 10%, even for officers who are making really good money, upwards of $150,000, $200,000 a year. And they're still paying less than a 10% effective tax rate. If they're doing it right and they're earning a military pension, which is taxable income, and they're saving and investing, they might get to the point where in retirement, like when they stop working for income, they actually are in a higher tax bracket than when they were working. And in that situation, then the Roth account is going to win every time. Pay your taxes now. Don't pay your taxes if you're going to be in a higher tax bracket in retirement. And it's, if you look at the calculators and you assume that you're going to be in the same tax bracket, it's a wash, right? Whether you pay 20% now or 20% in retirement, it's a wash. But I don't know about you, Jamie, but I'm planning that my net worth continues to grow throughout my life. And so I don't foresee a point in time actually looking towards the future where my income drops off to the point where I'm not in one of those higher tax brackets, like 22%, 24%, or even higher. So what you were saying about the simplicity of you pay your taxes now and then you're done and you don't have to do any more fancy tax planning. You don't have to worry about RMDs. It just doesn't have to occupy brain space, right? And I just love the idea, like I'll pay my taxes now. If it was not financially optimal, right? Like let's say I paid taxes in the 24% bracket and in retirement, I'm in the 22% bracket. Okay, that's not going to make or break my retirement, right? What is going to make or break my retirement is my savings rate, is how much my savings rate now, and then what my expenses are in retirement. And am I going to follow the 4% rule or maybe a 3% rule to be a little bit more conservative, right? Those are the kind of things that's going to make or break your retirement, not how much are you paying in tax. Like, were you suboptimal by 2% on your taxes?
And no one really knows. We're all hedging our bets on what we
Exactly.
think the tax code will look like and what interest rates are going to do, how much your net worth is going to grow, how long you're going to continue to work, what your future income is going to be. It's all, you're making the best decision you can with the knowledge you have now, but none of our decisions will be perfect.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to the show.
It's no secret Spencer and I are both huge fans of the Thrift Saving Plan, the military's version of the 401k retirement plan. We've both been investing in the TSP for over 14 years and are thrilled to announce we've consolidated all the information you need to know into a new course called the Confident TSP Investing Course.
That's right. The course is a comprehensive guide to navigating the TSP, breaking it down to easy, bite-sized chunks that lay out the basics of the thrift savings plan, the funds available, and the investing strategies so you can build wealth while you serve.
We both know what it's like to be a beginner and to be overwhelmed with all the information that's out there about investing in the TSP. Head over to militarymoneymanual.com/TSP, Tango Sierra Papa, to find our simple breakdown of all you need to know. You get lifetime access, and we'll have a growing library of content. And one of my favorite parts about the course is that for every course we sell, we're going to be donating one to an E4 or below.
Yeah, I love that feature of the course, Jamie. So if you're an officer, an NCO, a senior NCO out there, and you purchase a course, first of all, thank you. And also know that you're helping a fellow service member, a sailor, a soldier, a Marine, an airman, a guardian, a Coast Guardsman, E4 or below, take one step closer to their financial success.
The link's in the show notes, or head over to militarymoneymanual.com/TSP, where you can sign up for the Confident TSP Investing course. Now, back to the show. Spencer, from the dissenting view, if you will, there are some benefits in a lot of people's mind. There are benefits of a traditional IRA. We've talked about some of these already, but immediate tax deduction. So if you say you contribute $20,000 to your traditional account this year, it would be as if you make $20,000 less of taxable income to the IRS. So that's a more immediate benefit, which can be powerful if you put that tax savings to work.
Right.
Most people, I don't think, do that, and so they immediately lose out on the benefit that is one of the biggest benefits of the immediate tax deduction. If you're not taking that the tax saving on that lower income and investing it, then you're very likely negating the benefit altogether.
Well, maybe you have a higher quality of life
Maybe
that year.
But then
I
why do
think
you care about tax benefit? I don't know.
But I think most people are, I think you're right. I think most people just treat it as whether they contribute $7,000 to their Roth IRA or $7,000 to their traditional IRA, it's too complicated. It all comes out in the wash, right? Where you don't notice like, oh, let's say your tax rate is 20% effective. You don't notice an extra $1,400 of, if you contributed to your traditional account, because maybe you get it back on your tax return. And so, okay, your refund's a little bit higher, but you made that contribution a year ago, right? So it's just like when the accountants and the CPAs and the financial planners are looking at this, they're not taking into account like the behavioral side of it, that people are making these contributions, and whether they're putting $7,000 in their traditional account and $7,000 in their Roth account, to them, it's the money's gone, and whatever tax benefit there is, they're probably not like in the spreadsheet, calculating and being like, oh boy, when we get our refund, we're going to get $1,000 extra back. It's just not something, especially in the military, because our effective tax rate is so low.
Yeah. I think another benefit of the traditional, that people who are really intense into the FIRE movement, the financial independence, retire early. If your only income, let's say you stopped working at 35 or 40, and your only income is converting traditional dollars to Roth dollars, and you can do this kind of like on a 5-year ladder where you do this conversion and then you can pull it out because it's effectively your contributions after 5 years. You can set this up in a more advanced way where your only income is converting, say, $50,000 a year from traditional to Roth. You'd be in a very low, if any, tax bracket. You'd be in a very low tax bracket, if any, taxable income with your standard deduction and all. There's some ways to really nerd out and do that if you're going to do a very early retirement, where the traditional might be more of a benefit. But again, that's a little more complicated and probably doesn't apply to the average listener, but that might speak to a couple people on the line. Yeah,
and let's say you're in a dual military officer couple, and you might be getting close to the income limit. So Roth IRAs have a income limit where if you make over a certain modified adjusted gross income, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA directly. It changes every year, so I'm not going to mention, but it's over this year. It's in 2024. It's over $200,000. And remember, that's modified adjusted gross income. So that doesn't include BAH. That doesn't include BAS. Doesn't include CCT ePay, right? You have to go look at your 1040 and do some math and figure out what your MAGI actually is. Well, if you're getting close to that number, don't even bother figuring it out. Just do it back to a Roth IRA. And the way you do that, and there's tons of tutorials out there online. Vanguard even has it on their website. But basically, you make a contribution to a traditional IRA, let the cash settle in there, probably take 2 or 3 days, and then you immediately convert the entire contribution, $7,000 in this year, over to a Roth IRA. And they call that the backdoor Roth IRA, because you've first made a non-deductible contribution to your traditional IRA, and then you immediately converted it to a Roth IRA. It's not a taxable event because you already paid taxes on it, because you're doing it just out of your bank account money. You'll get a 1099-R at the end of the year to show to the IRS what you did. It's completely legal. So it's a way that high-income military families can still contribute to a Roth IRA, because at a certain income level, you can't even deduct your traditional IRA contributions. And so because it's a non-deductible contribution, so it's not necessarily a normal traditional IRA contribution that would lower your taxable income. It's a non-deductible IRA contribution that then you can convert. So you've already paid tax on it. You're not going to get a tax benefit from keeping it traditional. So you might as well just move it over to Roth and then let it grow tax-free, eliminate the RMD in the future tax bill, which is almost certainly the right way to do for probably anyone in that situation. But, if there's another situation where say that you're both working right now and you're both high-income earners, and at some point, 3 years from now, one spouse is going to stay at home with the kids for the next 10 years, your tax bracket will predictably go down if your income's cut in half, let's say. Then maybe it's a slightly different situation because you're going to be lower in the future. But what we really care about is a lower bracket upon retirement when we're taking these accounts out. There's a lot of different ways you can probably manipulate the spreadsheet and look at the numbers to make them work. The biggest thing we can share is if you're getting this detailed and this into the minutia on your retirement savings, like, you're doing fine. Keep contributing, keep investing, make good investment decisions, and then the tax Roth versus traditional is not going to make or break in most cases. Yeah, I'll just say one more thing, Jamie. So when our income started going up and I wasn't hitting combat zones quite as much, this was when I was probably a captain, I started making traditional IRA contributions so that I would lower my tax bill and I would get a higher refund and pay less taxes. When I did actually go to a PCS to a combat zone and I had a full year tax-free, I was able to convert the traditional IRA. There's about $20,000, $30,000 in there. I was able to convert the traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. It was a taxable event, paid my taxes on it. But because I was making no income that year, I think that standard deduction took out most of it. And so I only ended up paying taxes on maybe a couple thousand of it. And because I was in the lowest bracket, it was about 10%. And so I paid maybe like $800.
You barely had to pay anything.
For the conversion from traditional IRA to Roth IRA. And now all that money is locked in my Roth IRA, and it's going to grow tax-free for the next 30 years. And I'm going to be able to pull it out after age 59 and a half, tax-free.
Spencer, let's talk a little bit about state tax consideration. So for service members that are paying taxes, which we hope that they've ever been connected to or stationed in a state where they're not charged income tax. We've talked about that in a number of past episodes, but let's say someone is paying state income tax. How does that affect their Roth versus traditional conversation?
Again, this isn't simple, Jamie. This is getting a little bit more complicated, but if you are a legal resident of a state that charges a state income tax, you might want to make a traditional contribution now so that you don't have to pay taxes on the income, because maybe in retirement, you're going to move to a state that doesn't have an income tax.
Or doesn't tax retirement pay.
Or even. Doesn't tax retirement pay, yeah. Let's say that you're in a state like Massachusetts or Connecticut, and you're stationed there, and you're a legal resident, and you're paying your state income tax, but you're going to move to Florida or Texas in retirement. Then yeah, it might make sense to make a traditional contribution, so you skip paying the state tax, and then when you move to no income tax state, and you make the withdrawals from the account, you'll have to pay the federal taxes, but you won't have to pay the state income taxes.
In most cases, that might, I don't know state taxes, but I'm guessing that's like 3-5% kind of taxable income. I think a few states might be higher than 5%, but I don't know, maybe around 5%. So probably not a huge make or break number on that either. Another data point to look at.
I mean, it could be like, I know New York has super high state taxes. It definitely could be a consideration for the traditional versus Roth debate. But Jamie, I think in general, if you're hemming and hawing between making a traditional or a Roth contribution, make a Roth contribution. And guess what? If you get it wrong, that's okay. A lot of times you can also recharacterize the contribution too. So let's say that you hire a CPA to do your taxes, and they take a look at it and they're like, hey, in 2024, you made Roth IRA contributions, but you were in a higher tax bracket. So it might make sense to recharacterize that as a traditional contribution, and then you can deduct it on your taxes, and then we can get the money back for you on your refund. And you might say, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. Again, you'll have to pay a CPA to figure that out for you. So what's the generic, no information about your particular situation answer that we'd like to give you?
You should always do Roth.
Yeah, you should always do Roth accounts. Roth IRA, Roth TSP, I think. And if you have a situation where you're like, no, look, I've done the math and I can predict the future and I know what's going to happen in retirement and traditional is the way to go. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you, but if this is one of those things that if you're not sure where to start, just do something and go with the Roth IRA or the Roth TSP contributions.
Spencer, a couple closing thoughts I want to make sure the listener has is you can go back and forth. So just because you choose Roth or traditional this year doesn't mean you can't switch it next year. And you can also mix. So if you're just unsure and it gives you a lot of anxiety to do all Roth, you can mix 50% of your contributions traditional, 50% to Roth. You can do Roth in your TSP and traditional in your IRA. You can mix it up if you don't like, what we're pitching here is Roth is probably the way to go for most people. It's not a decision now that you can never change. If your situation changes, you make the best decision with the data that you had at the time. And then if it changes, then you update that decision. It's not set it now and it's stuck for the rest of your life.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, and you can always convert back and forth. Be flexible with it. Give yourself opportunities, give yourself options, and when in doubt, go Roth.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.